Under the pouring rain, an exhausted black waitress was getting ready to end her shift when she suddenly spotted an elderly woman shivering right in front of the diner, her silver hair plastered down by the cold wind. Without a second thought, she rushed out, pushed the wheelchair that was stuck on the sidewalk, helped the woman inside, wrapped a towel around her shoulders, brewed a hot cup of tea, and called a taxi to ensure she got home safely. However, the very next morning, just as the diner opened its doors, a billionaire walked in with a sharp, cold gaze. He was the elderly woman's son, and a single sentence from him caused her life to take a turn no one could have ever imagined. Before we go back, let us know where you're watching from, and subscribe, because tomorrow I've got something extra special for you. The rain came down like God himself was angry at New York City. Grace Thompson stood behind the counter of Lexington Diner, staring at the clock that seemed stuck on 10:47 p.m. Her feet screamed inside her worn-out sneakers. 12 hours. She'd been on her feet for 12 straight hours, and the ache had climbed from her ankles all the way up to her lower back. Table 6 needs a refill. Tony barked from the kitchen window, his face shiny with grease and sweat. Grace grabbed the coffee pot without a word. Pour, smile, clear, wipe, repeat. This was her life. This had been her life for 3 years, ever since her daughter Emma was born, and her boyfriend decided fatherhood wasn't for him. The diner was almost empty. Just old Pete in his usual corner booth nursing his third cup of decaf. The fluorescent lights flickered overhead, casting everything in that sickly yellow glow. Outside, the neon sign buzzed and sputtered, half the letters burned out, so it read El Ching on D.I.E.R. Grace wiped down the counter for the third time. She glanced at the clock again. 10:51 p.m. 9 more minutes until closing. That's when she saw her. Through the rain-streaked window, barely visible under the broken streetlight, an old woman sat in a wheelchair. She wasn't moving, just sitting there in the downpour, her white hair plastered to her skull, her thin frame shaking. Grace's hand froze mid-wipe. "Tony, I'll be right back." She didn't wait for his response. Her body moved before her brain caught up, pushing through the glass door into the storm. The rain hit her like a physical force, instantly soaking through her uniform. "Ma'am," Grace shouted over the thunder. "Ma'am, what are you doing out here?" The woman's head lifted slowly. Her face was pale, lips tinged blue, but her eyes were sharp, aware, terrified. "My son." The woman's voice came out as a whisper. "He said he'd pick me up from the clinic. He said—" Her voice broke. Grace crouched down, rain running down her face. "How long have you been out here?" The old woman's hands trembled in her lap. "I don't know. An hour, maybe more. I called him 3 times. He didn't answer." Something twisted in Grace's chest. She knew that feeling. Being forgotten. Being left behind like you didn't matter. "Come on," Grace said, already moving behind the wheelchair. "Let's get you inside." "But the diner's closing." "I don't care. You're freezing." Grace pushed the wheelchair toward the diner. The wheels caught on a crack in the sidewalk, and she had to muscle it over. Her shoulders burned with the effort, but she kept going. Tony stuck his head out from the kitchen. "Grace, what the hell?" "Not now, Tony." She wheeled the woman to the booth nearest the radiator. The woman's whole body was shaking now, her teeth chattering so hard Grace could hear it. "Stay right here. Okay, I'm going to get you some towels." Grace rushed to the back, grabbed every clean dish towel she could find, and hurried back. She wrapped them around the woman's shoulders, around her thin arms. "Thank you," the woman whispered. "You don't have to do this." "Yes, I do." Grace looked at her properly now. The woman had to be in her late 70s. Her clothes were expensive, you could tell, even soaking wet. A cashmere cardigan, pearl earrings. "What's your name?" Grace asked softly. "Margaret, but everyone calls me Maggie." "I'm Grace. Nice to meet you, Maggie. Are you hungry?" Maggie's eyes filled with tears. "I don't want to be trouble." "You're not trouble. Hold on." Grace went behind the counter. She ladled chicken soup into a bowl, the good stuff they made fresh every morning. Added 2 slices of buttered toast. Brought it over with a mug of hot tea. "Here, eat this. It'll help." Maggie stared at the food like it was a miracle. Her hands shook as she picked up the spoon. She lifted it to her lips and took a sip. "Oh," Maggie breathed. "Oh, this is wonderful." Grace sat down across from her. She should be cleaning up, getting ready to go home, but something kept her in that booth. "Tell me about your son," Grace said quietly. Maggie's face changed. The gratitude flickered into something else. Sadness. "William. He's very successful, very busy. He runs his own company, Hayes Corporation. She took another sip of soup. He's a good boy. He forgets sometimes. About me. About everything that isn't work. I'm sorry. His father was the same way. Work, work, work. Until one day his heart gave out right there at his desk. William found him. It changed him. Made him harder. Maggie set down her spoon. He moved me into a facility last year, but I still need to go to the clinic for my treatments twice a week. Today was supposed to be his turn to take me. Grace watched Maggie's face, the way her jaw tightened. You have treatments. Multiple sclerosis. It's progressing. Slowly, but... Maggie gestured at the wheelchair. Hence this. The diner felt very quiet suddenly. Tell me about you, Maggie said. You must have family waiting at home. Grace smiled, but it was tired. Just my daughter, Emma. She's 3, staying with my neighbor tonight while I work. 3, Maggie repeated, her face softening. That's a beautiful age. Yeah, she asked me this morning why the sky isn't purple. Took me 10 minutes to explain, and I'm still not sure she bought my answer. Maggie laughed, actually laughed. Children are smarter than we give them credit for. Don't I know it? Last week she looked at my bank statement and asked me why all the numbers had minus signs. 3 years old, and she's already figured out we're broke. Grace hadn't meant to say that. It just slipped out. You work hard, Maggie observed. I can see it in your hands. Grace looked down. Her hands were rough, calloused, the nails cut short. They were the hands of someone who'd never had anything handed to her. I do what I have to do. For Emma. She deserves better than this. Grace gestured around the shabby diner. Better than a mom who comes home smelling like fryer grease. You're there for her. That's what matters. Maggie reached across the table. Her hand, thin and spotted with age, covered Grace's. You're a good mother. I can tell. The good ones always worry they're not doing enough. Something in Grace's throat tightened. She pulled her hand back gently. Finish your soup, Grace said, before it gets cold. They sat in comfortable silence. Maggie ate slowly, savoring each bite. Outside, the rain continued, but inside the diner, it almost felt peaceful. Almost. The door chimed. Grace looked up and immediately tensed. A woman stood in the doorway, rain dripping off her designer coat. She was maybe 40, blonde with sharp features. Everything about her screamed money and authority. The woman's eyes scanned the diner and landed on Maggie. Mrs. Sullivan, the woman said, her voice cool. I've been looking for you. Maggie's whole body went rigid. Grace stood up slowly, positioning herself between Maggie and this stranger. And you are? Grace asked. The woman's eyes flicked to Grace, assessing her in about 2 seconds. The look said it all. Grace registered as nobody. Victoria Chase, I'm Mrs. Sullivan's caregiver. I'm here to take her home. Her caregiver, Grace repeated. Funny. She didn't mention you. Victoria's smile was thin. Well, I'm here now. Come along, Mrs. Sullivan. The car is waiting. But Maggie wasn't moving. She was staring at Victoria with something that looked like fear. Grace's jaw tightened. Maggie, do you know this woman? The silence stretched. Grace could hear her own heartbeat. Finally, Maggie nodded. Just barely. Yes, she whispered. She works for William. Something about the way she said it made Grace's stomach turn. But what could she do? She was a waitress. This woman was clearly from Maggie's world. I see, Grace said slowly. She crouched down so she and Maggie were eye level. Are you sure you want to go with her? Maggie's voice faltered. I don't have a choice, dear. Grace pulled out her order pad, scribbled something quickly, and tucked the paper into Maggie's cardigan pocket. That's my number, the diner's number. If you need anything, you call me. Understand? Maggie's eyes filled with tears again. Thank you. For everything. Victoria moved forward, gripping the wheelchair handles. We really must be going. As Victoria wheeled Maggie toward the door, the old woman looked back one last time. Her eyes met Grace's. In that look was loneliness, the kind that money couldn't fix. The door chimed as they left. Through the window, Grace watched Victoria push Maggie toward a black Mercedes idling at the curb. The car was sleek, expensive, its windows tinted dark, but Grace saw it, or felt it. Someone was in that car, someone watching. The Mercedes pulled away taillights, disappearing into the storm. Grace stood there for a long moment, a strange heaviness in her chest. You done playing Mother Teresa? Tony called from the kitchen. Because I'm locking up. Yeah, Grace said quietly. I'm done. She grabbed her coat, flipped the sign to closed, and stepped into the rain. The street was empty now, just puddles reflecting broken streetlights. Grace walked home the same way she always did, 6 blocks north, turned left on Amsterdam, up 3 flights to apartment 4C. She unlocked her door quietly. The apartment was dark except for a small lamp. Mrs. Chen was asleep on the couch, Emma curled up next to her. "Mrs. Chen," Grace whispered, touching the older woman's shoulder. Mrs. Chen startled awake. "Oh, Grace, you're back." Emma was an angel. "Thank you, really." After Mrs. Chen left, Grace locked the door. Her whole body ached. She walked over to where Emma slept, brushed a curl off her daughter's forehead, kissed her temple softly. "I'm gonna make it better for you," Grace whispered. "I promise." Grace finally moved to her own bed, didn't bother changing, just kicked off her shoes and lay down, stared at the ceiling. She thought about Maggie, about that look in her eyes, about Victoria's grip on that wheelchair, and she thought about the Mercedes, the tinted windows, the feeling of being watched. Something about tonight felt unfinished. Grace didn't know it then, but she was right. Tonight wasn't an ending. It was the beginning of everything. Grace woke up to Emma's sticky fingers poking her cheek. Mama, you're still wearing your work clothes." Grace's eyes cracked open. Sunlight streamed through the thin curtains, too bright, too early. Her body felt like it had been run over by a truck. "What time is it, baby?" "The clock says 8:30, 8:30 a.m. Grace shot up. She had exactly 90 minutes before her next shift started. 90 minutes to feed Emma, get her to Mrs. Chen's, and make it back across town to the diner. Okay. Let's get you some breakfast." The morning passed in a blur. Cereal, cartoons, a quick shower where Grace stood under lukewarm water and tried not to think about how tired she was. She thought about Maggie instead, wondered if the old woman made it home okay, wondered if she was warm, wondered why she even cared. Grace dropped Emma off at Mrs. Chen's apartment at 9:45, kissed her daughter's forehead 3 times for luck, and ran for the bus. She made it to the diner with 4 minutes to spare. Tony was already there, of course, always early, always scowling. "You look like hell," he said by way of greeting. "Good morning to you too." The lunch rush hit at noon. Grace moved through it mechanically. Burgers, fries, coffee, more coffee. A guy at table 4 left a $2 tip on a $30 check and smiled like he'd just funded her retirement. It was 2:17 p.m. when things got weird. The door chimed and Grace looked up from wiping down table 9. A man stood in the entrance, not just any man, the kind of man who didn't belong in a place like Lexington Diner. He wore a charcoal suit that probably cost more than Grace made in 6 months. His shoes were polished to a mirror shine. His hair was silver at the temples, perfectly styled. He looked like he'd stepped out of a magazine ad for expensive watches. The diner went quiet. Even the usual clatter from the kitchen seemed to pause. The man's eyes swept the room and landed on Grace. He walked straight toward her, his movements precise, purposeful. Grace's stomach tightened. She knew. Somehow, she just knew this had something to do with last night. "Grace Thompson." His voice was deep controlled. "Who's asking?" "My name is William Hayes. I believe you met my mother last night." There it was. Grace set down the rag she'd been holding, crossed her arms over her chest. "I did. Is she okay?" "She's fine, thanks to you." William glanced around the diner, his expression unreadable. "Is there somewhere we can talk privately?" "This is as private as it gets. Whatever you need to say it here." William's jaw tightened slightly. He wasn't used to being told no. Grace could tell, but he nodded. "Fair enough. I wanted to thank you for helping my mother. She told me what you did, how you brought her inside, fed her, made sure she was warm." He paused. "I also wanted to apologize. I should have been there. I wasn't. That's on me." Grace studied his face. He looked like Maggie. Same sharp eyes, same bone structure, but where Maggie's eyes held warmth, his held something harder. Control, distance. "Your mother sat in the rain for over an hour waiting for you. She called you 3 times. "I know." His voice was tight. "I was in a meeting. My phone was off. By the time I saw her messages, Victoria had already been dispatched to pick her up." "Victoria?" Grace's tone made it clear what she thought of that. "My chief of staff. She's efficient. She's cold." William's eyebrow raised slightly. "You don't pull punches, do you?" "I don't have time to. I work 2 jobs and raise a 3-year-old on my own. You want sugarcoating? Go somewhere else." Something flickered in William's eyes. Respect maybe, or surprise. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out an envelope. "I'd like to offer you compensation for your kindness last night." Grace's spine went rigid. "I don't want your money." It's not charity. Consider it a— I said no. Grace's voice was sharp enough to cut. I didn't help your mother because I wanted something from you. I helped her because she needed help. That's it. That's the whole story. William stood there, envelope still extended, looking at Grace like she was a puzzle he couldn't solve. You're a waitress at a diner that's barely staying open. You have a daughter. I looked into your situation. You what? Grace's voice rose. Several customers turned to look. You investigated me. I needed to know who had contact with my mother. Your mother, right. The woman you left in the rain like she was trash. Grace stepped closer, her voice dropping to something dangerous. You want to make yourself feel better? Write a check to a homeless shelter. Don't come in here throwing money at me like that erases what you did. William's expression hardened. You don't understand the pressures of what? Being rich, being important. Here's what I understand, Mr. Hayes. Your mother is lonely. She's sick. And she's terrified that the one person who's supposed to care about her doesn't have time for her anymore. Grace's hands were shaking now. So take your envelope and your expensive suit and get out of my diner. The silence was deafening. William slowly put the envelope back in his pocket. His jaw worked like he was chewing on words he didn't want to swallow. You're right, he said finally. About most of it. I failed my mother last night. I've been failing her for years. He met Grace's eyes. But you're wrong about one thing. This isn't about making myself feel better. It's about recognizing something rare. And what's that? Someone who saw my mother as a human being, not an inconvenience, not a burden, not a problem to be managed. William's voice was quieter now. That's rare in my world, Miss Thompson, rarer than you might think. Grace wanted to stay angry. It was easier that way, but something in his voice, in the way his shoulders dropped just slightly, made her pause. She's a good person, Grace said. Your mother, in case you forgot. I didn't forget. I just stopped paying attention. William pulled out a business card instead of the envelope. I'm not here to insult you with money. I'm here to offer you a job. Grace blinked. What? A job? At Hayes Corporation, senior consultant position. Your salary would be 10 times what you make here. Are you insane? I'm a waitress. I didn't even finish college. I don't need another MBA who can quote textbooks. I need someone with instincts. Someone who can read people. Someone who sees what others miss. William set the card on the table between them. Think about it. That's all I ask. I don't need to think about it. The answer is no. No. I don't belong in your world, Mr. Hayes, and I'm not interested in pretending I do. William studied her for a long moment. Then he did something unexpected. He smiled, not a polite business smile, a real one. My mother said you were stubborn. She also said you were kind smart and that you made the best chicken soup she'd had in years. He tapped the business card. The offer stands. Call me if you change your mind. Or don't. Either way, thank you for what you did last night. He turned and walked toward the door. His hand was on the handle when Grace heard herself call out. Wait. William turned back. Your mother. She's okay, really. His expression softened. She is. She asked me to tell you thank you. And that she still has your number. She might call sometime if that's all right. Tell her I'd like that. William nodded once, then left. The diner stayed quiet for another beat before the normal sounds of lunch service resumed. Grace looked down at the business card on the table. Simple, elegant. William Hayes, CEO, Hayes Corporation. And a phone number. She should throw it away. Should forget this whole bizarre conversation ever happened. Instead, she slipped it into her apron pocket. Tony appeared at her elbow. Who the hell was that? Nobody, Grace said. Just somebody's son trying to make things right. Grace didn't call. For 2 days, that business card sat in her apron pocket like a hot coal. Every time she reached for her order pad, her fingers brushed against it. Every time she counted her tips at the end of a shift and came up short, she thought about it. 10 times her current salary. The number was absurd, impossible, had to be some kind of joke. On the 3rd day, her landlord knocked on her door at 7 in the morning. Rent's due, Grace. You're already 4 days late. I know, Mr. Patterson. I'll have it by Friday. I promise. You said that last month, too. I got bills to pay, same as you. His face wasn't unkind, just tired. Friday, or I gotta start the eviction process. I don't want to, but I can't keep making exceptions. After he left, Grace sat on her sagging couch and did the math in her head for the 100th time. Rent $1,200, utilities $180, groceries $300 if she was really careful, childcare $400, and Emma needed new shoes because she'd grown out of her old ones. Grace pulled out the business card and stared at it. "Mama, why do you look sad?" Emma stood in the doorway to their bedroom holding her stuffed rabbit by one ear. Her pajamas had a stain on the front from yesterday's spaghetti sauce that wouldn't come out no matter how many times Grace washed it. "I'm not sad, baby. Just thinking." "About what?" "About how to make things better for us." Emma climbed onto the couch and snuggled into Grace's side. She smelled like baby shampoo and sleep. "Things are already good, Mama. We have each other." Grace wrapped her arms around her daughter and tried not to cry. Kids didn't understand that love didn't pay the electric bill, that being together didn't put food on the table. "Yeah," Grace whispered, "we do." That night, after Emma was asleep and the apartment was quiet, except for the usual sounds of the building settling and neighbors arguing through thin walls, Grace picked up her phone. She stared at William Hayes' number for 10 full minutes. This was crazy. She was a diner waitress. She had no business experience, no degree, no connections. What could she possibly offer a corporation? But then she thought about Emma, about the eviction notice that was coming if she didn't figure something out, about the fact that she was 27 years old and already felt like life had beaten her down into something small and tired. Grace dialed before she could change her mind. The phone rang 3 times. Hayes. His voice was crisp, professional. Grace almost hung up. "Mr. Hayes, this is Grace Thompson from the diner." A pause. Then, "Miss Thompson, I wasn't sure you'd call." "Yeah, well, neither was I." Grace took a breath. "That job offer, is it still available?" "It is." I need to know something first. Why me, really? Because the whole you can read people thing sounds like something you tell yourself to justify a weird impulse decision." William was quiet for a moment. When he spoke again, his voice had lost some of its business polish. "You want the honest answer." "That's why I'm asking. I watched you with my mother that night, through the diner window. I saw how you didn't hesitate, didn't calculate. You just acted. Do you know how rare that is? In my world, every action is strategic. Every kindness has an angle. But you," he paused, "you were just kind. No agenda. And when I came to thank you, you told me off instead of taking my money. That told me everything I needed to know. That I'm stupid enough to turn down free cash. That you have integrity and self-respect. 2 things that are harder to find than Harvard MBAs. Grace paced her small living room. "What exactly would I be doing, because I don't know anything about running a company or whatever it is you do?" Hayes Corporation handles mergers and acquisitions. We buy companies, restructure them, make them profitable, sometimes sell them. It's about understanding numbers, yes, but it's also about understanding people, understanding what motivates them, what scares them, where they'll compromise, and where they won't. And you think a waitress can do that? I think someone who's worked in service for years, who's had to read customers to maximize tips, who's had to negotiate with landlords and juggle bills and survive on her instincts. Yes, I think that person has skills my analysts in their corner offices don't." Grace stopped pacing. "What's the catch?" "The catch. There's always a catch. Nothing this good comes without strings." William's voice held something that might have been approval. "Smart question. Here's the string. I need someone to help care for my mother as part of the job. Take her to appointments. Spend time with her. Make sure she's not forgotten again." There it was, the real reason. "You're hiring me to be your mother's companion. I'm hiring you to be a consultant who also ensures my mother receives the attention she deserves. 2 jobs, 1 salary. Think of it as efficiency. Think of it as you paying someone to do what you should be doing yourself." "Yes." William's voice was flat. "That's exactly what it is. Because I tried doing it myself and failed, repeatedly. So I'm trying something different. Is that a deal breaker for you?" Grace thought about Maggie, about those kind eyes and that lonely smile, about how it felt to be forgotten by the people who were supposed to love you. "No," Grace said quietly. "It's not a deal breaker, but I have conditions." "I'm listening." "My daughter, Emma, she's 3. I need childcare covered. Good childcare, not just someone who will stick her in front of a TV all day. And if she gets sick, I need to be able to leave work to take care of her. No questions asked. Done. What else? I need this in writing, a real contract. Because if I'm giving up my job at the diner, I need to know this isn't some whim that'll disappear in a month. You'll have a contract. 1 year minimum guaranteed salary, even if things don't work out. Anything else?" Grace's mind raced. This was really happening. She was really negotiating a corporate job in her pajamas at 11 p.m. on a Wednesday. When would I start? Monday. That gives you time to give notice at the diner, arrange childcare, prepare yourself. Prepare myself for what? For the fact that most of my employees are going to hate you on site. William's tone was matter of fact. Your young black have no formal credentials, and you're being brought in at a senior level. They're going to try to tear you apart. Professionally speaking. Why are you telling me this? Because I don't believe in sending people into battles they don't know they're fighting. You asked for honesty. That's honesty. Grace sat down on her couch, suddenly exhausted. You make it sound really appealing. I make it sound realistic. If you want appealing, I can have PR write you a recruitment brochure, but you strike me as someone who prefers the truth. I do. Grace closed her eyes. Okay, I'll do it. But I'm giving the diner 2 weeks' notice, not just walking out on Tony. Fair enough. I'll have Victoria contact you tomorrow with details. She'll arrange everything childcare schedule contract review. Victoria. Great. She already loves me. Victoria is excellent at her job. She's also loyal to me, which means she'll be professional with you whether she likes you or not. Trust me, you want her on your side. If you say so, I do. Welcome to Hayes Corporation, Miss Thompson. I think you're going to surprise a lot of people. Yeah, Grace said, including myself. After they hung up, Grace sat in the dark for a long time. She kept expecting to feel excited, relieved, something positive. Instead, she felt terrified. What had she just agreed to? She was about to walk into a world where she didn't speak the language, didn't know the rules, didn't understand the game. She was going to be surrounded by people who'd spent years learning things she'd never even heard of. Grace walked to Emma's room and stood in the doorway, watching her daughter sleep. Emma's little chest rose and fell steadily. Her face was peaceful, innocent. I'm doing this for you, Grace whispered. I hope I don't screw it up. She turned and walked back to her room, lay down in bed, fully clothed for the second time that week. Tomorrow, she'd tell Tony, tell Mrs. Chen, start figuring out how to be someone she'd never been before. Tomorrow, she'd start becoming someone who belonged in William Hayes's world. Tonight, she'd let herself be scared. The Hayes Corporation building looked like it was designed to intimidate people. Grace stood on the sidewalk across the street, staring up at 40 floors of glass and steel that reflected the morning sun like a blade. People in expensive suits streamed in and out of the revolving doors, all of them moving with the kind of confidence that came from knowing exactly where they belonged. Grace did not feel like she belonged. She'd bought her outfit at a consignment shop in Brooklyn. A navy blazer that was slightly too big in the shoulders, a white blouse, gray slacks that she'd hemmed herself. The shoes pinched her toes. Her hair was pulled back in a bun that she'd watched 3 YouTube videos to learn how to do properly. She looked professional. She hoped. You can do this, Grace muttered to herself. You've dealt with drunk customers at 2 a.m. You've negotiated with landlords. You can handle a bunch of people in suits. She didn't believe herself, but she crossed the street anyway. The lobby was enormous. Marble floors, modern art on the walls that probably cost more than Grace's entire life savings. A security desk where 2 guards sat looking bored, and everywhere people walking with purpose, talking on phones, carrying leather briefcases. Grace approached the security desk. Hi, I'm Grace Thompson. It's my first day. The younger guard checked his computer. ID. Grace handed over her driver's license. He scanned it, typed something, then handed her a temporary badge. 38th floor. Elevators are to your right. The elevator ride felt like it lasted hours. Grace watched the numbers climb. 10, 15, 20. Her reflection in the polished metal doors looked small, out of place. The doors opened on 38. The floor was open concept. Desks arranged in clusters, glass-walled offices along the perimeter. Everyone looked busy. Everyone looked like they'd been born wearing business casual. You must be Grace. Grace turned. Victoria Chase stood there looking exactly like she had at the diner. Blonde hair in a perfect bob, sharp suit, sharper eyes. Miss Chase. Just Victoria. Follow me. She didn't wait for a response, just started walking. Grace hurried to keep up. Mr. Hayes is in meetings all morning. I'll be getting you set up. Your office is this way. I have an office. Victoria's glance was brief. Did you expect a cubicle? I didn't know what to expect. They stopped at a glass-walled office. Not huge, but not small either. A desk, a computer. A view of the city that made Grace's breath catch. This is yours. It will get you logged in. You'll find your employee handbook on the desk along with your first assignment. Victoria checked her watch. Your official start time was 20 minutes ago. Grace checked her phone. 8:20 a.m. I thought start time was 8:30 inches. 8:30 is when most people arrive. Start time is 8:00. Victoria's smile was cold. Punctuality matters here, Grace. I'd suggest setting your alarm earlier. Grace bit back about 10 different responses. Noted. Good. Someone from IT will be by shortly. I suggest you review the Orion Group file before your 2 p.m. meeting. Victoria turned to leave, then paused. A word of advice. Don't expect anyone to like you. You weren't promoted from within. You don't have the credentials. And everyone knows why you're really here. And why is that? To keep an eye on Mr. Hayes' mother. We all know it. So don't pretend this is about your qualifications. After Victoria left, Grace stood in her office feeling like she'd been slapped. She wanted to leave, wanted to run back to the diner where at least she understood the rules. Instead, she sat down at her desk and opened the file Victoria had mentioned. Orion Group, a manufacturing company, 2,000 employees. Hayes Corporation was considering acquiring it. The proposal recommended immediate restructuring, including the termination of 40% of the workforce. Grace read through page after page of financial projections, cost savings, efficiency improvements, profit margins. Nowhere did it mention that those numbers represented real people, real families, real lives that would be destroyed. She thought about the diner, about watching coworkers get let go when business was slow, about the look in their eyes when they realized they couldn't pay rent that month. Grace pulled out a notebook and started taking notes. Not about the numbers, about the people behind them. You settling in okay? Grace looked up. A young guy stood in her doorway. Early 20s, wearing jeans and a hoodie that said, "Code is poetry." I'm supposed to be settling in. Not sure I'm succeeding. He grinned. You're the diner lady, right? The one who told off Mr. Hayes. News travels fast. This place runs on gossip and coffee. I'm Jake Miller, IT department. He held up a laptop. Here to get you set up. Fair warning, our system is temperamental and occasionally possessed by demons. Grace laughed. She couldn't help it. Thanks for the warning. Jake spent the next hour getting her logged in, explaining the various software systems and casually dropping useful information about office politics. Victoria hates everyone equally, so don't take it personally. Harrison Langford in finance is a sexist dinosaur who thinks women should still be secretaries. And Marcus Webb in strategy is gunning for VP, so he sees everyone as competition. Jake finished configuring her email, but Mr. Hayes is fair, tough but fair. If you do good work, he'll back you up. That's reassuring. Yeah, well, you're gonna need it. That Orion deal, it's Langford's baby. He's convinced the mass layoffs are necessary. If you disagree with him in the meeting, he's going to come at you hard. Grace looked at the file again. What do you think about the layoffs? Jake's expression turned serious. I think numbers on a spreadsheet don't bleed when you cut them. But people do. After Jake left, Grace dove back into the file. She had 6 hours until the meeting. 6 hours to understand a company she'd never heard of, an industry she knew nothing about, and somehow find an alternative to putting 800 people out of work. No pressure. Grace worked through lunch. Didn't even notice when people walked by her office, didn't hear the whispers. She was too focused on the patterns she was seeing in the data. The proposed cuts were all frontline workers, the people who actually made the products. But management positions untouched. The executive compensation packages, still enormous. She started pulling up comparable companies, looking at how they'd handled similar situations, taking notes in her own words, not the corporate jargon that filled the official documents. At 1:45, Grace sat back and looked at what she'd written. It wasn't polished. It wasn't what a consultant would normally present. But it was real. And it was right. She grabbed her notebook and headed to the conference room. The room was already half full. Men in expensive suits sat around a massive oak table. They looked up when Grace entered, and the temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. Grace took a seat, kept her back straight, met their stares with her own. An older white man with silver hair and a ruddy complexion looked at her like she was something unpleasant he'd stepped in. You must be our new consultant. The pause before consultant was deliberate, mocking. Grace Thompson, you must be Harrison Langford. That's Mr. Langford to you. Then it's Miss Thompson to you. Grace smiled. It wasn't friendly. Langford's face reddened. Do you know who I am? CFO. 20 years with the company. MBA from Wharton. A reputation for cutting costs and bonuses that reflect those cuts. Grace's voice was steady. Yes, Mr. Langford, I know exactly who you are. The room went silent. The door opened. William Hayes entered, and everyone straightened in their chairs. He took the head of the table, his eyes moving around the room and landing briefly on Grace. She couldn't read his expression. Let's begin. Langford, you're up first. Walk us through the Orion proposal. Langford stood, pressed a button on the remote, and a presentation appeared on the screen. He talked for 20 minutes about efficiency, optimization, and shareholder value. Every slide was full of numbers and charts. Not once did he mention the word people. When he finished, he looked around the table with satisfaction. Any questions? I have one. Everyone turned to Grace. William leaned back in his chair. Go ahead, Miss Thompson. Grace stood up. Her hands wanted to shake. She didn't let them. Mr. Langford, your proposal saves $50 million annually by cutting 800 workers, but you haven't accounted for knowledge loss training costs for new hires or the PR disaster when this hits the news. You also haven't considered that most of those workers are in skilled positions that take months to fill. Langford's smile was condescending. And you've determined this. How? By reading people. By reading your own data, and by understanding something you seem to have forgotten. Grace looked around the table. Companies aren't just numbers on a balance sheet. They're made of people. And when you cut people without strategy, without care, you destroy institutional knowledge that can't be replaced. Institutional knowledge. Langford said it like it was a joke. Let me guess. You're going to tell us these workers are valuable because they care about their jobs, because they have families. This isn't a charity, sweetheart. It's business. Grace felt anger flash through her. She channeled it. Used it. You're right. It is business. So let's talk business. Your plan cuts workers but keeps a bloated management structure. You're paying 6 executives a combined $12 million annually to manage a workforce you're shrinking by 40%. That math doesn't work. She moved to the screen, pulled up her own analysis on her laptop. Here's an alternative. Voluntary retirement packages for 300 senior workers. That saves $20 million. Restructure middle management, reduce those 6 executive positions to 4. That's another $8 million. Invest $10 million in training and technology to increase productivity. Net savings $18 million annually, and you keep 75% of your workforce. The room was dead silent. That's less than my proposal, Langford said. It's sustainable. Your proposal guts the company. Mine gives it a chance to grow. Langford's face was purple now. You've been here for, what, 6 hours, and you think you understand this business better than I do. I understand people, and I understand that treating them like disposable assets is how you kill a company. Grace met his eyes. It's always just business until it's your job on the line, Mr. Langford. The silence stretched. Then William spoke. That's enough for today. Langford, Grace, I want revised proposals from both of you by Thursday. We'll reconvene then. The meeting ended. People filed out, most of them avoiding Grace's eyes. Langford stormed past her without a word. Grace gathered her things with shaking hands. She'd just gone to war with the CFO of Hayes Corporation on her first day. This was either the bravest or stupidest thing she'd ever done. Miss Thompson. William stood by the door. His expression was neutral. Yes. My office. Now. Grace's stomach dropped. She'd pushed too hard. She was about to get fired on her first day. She followed William to his corner office. He closed the door behind them, walked to his desk, and turned to face her. That, William said slowly, was either brilliant or career suicide. I haven't decided which yet. I just told you what I saw in the data. You told Harrison Langford, a man with an ego the size of Manhattan, that his analysis was wrong. In front of the entire senior leadership team. William's eyes were unreadable. Do you understand what you've done? Probably made an enemy. Several enemies. Langford has allies. They're going to try to destroy you now. Grace lifted her chin. Should I apologize? William studied her for a long moment. Then, unexpectedly, he smiled. God, no. I brought you here to shake things up. You just exceeded my expectations faster than I anticipated. He sat on the edge of his desk. But I need you to be ready. Thursday's meeting is going to be war. They'll try to tear your proposal apart. Can you defend it? Yes. How? Because I'm right, and because I've been on the other side of those layoffs. I know what they cost in ways your spreadsheets never will. William nodded slowly. Good. Use that. But refine your numbers. Make sure every detail is bulletproof. Jake Miller can help with the data analysis. Don't trust anyone else yet. Why Jake? Because he's honest. And because Victoria vetted him when I told her to find you an ally. William moved back behind his desk. Welcome to Hayes Corporation, Miss Thompson. Try not to get fired before Thursday. Grace left his office and went back to her own, sat down in her chair and stared at the city view without really seeing it. She'd survived her first day. Barely. Thursday came too fast. Grace had spent every waking hour preparing. Jake had helped her refine the numbers, run scenarios, stress test every assumption. They'd worked late Tuesday night, and when Grace checked the clock, it was 2 a.m., and Jake was asleep on his keyboard. Go home, Grace had said, shaking his shoulder. I can finish this. You sure? Yeah. And Jake. Thank you. Really. He'd grinned, exhausted. Hey, someone's got to have your back in this place. Now it was Thursday at 1:55 p.m., and Grace was standing outside the conference room, trying to remember how to breathe. You look like you're about to throw up. Grace turned. Victoria stood there holding 2 cups of coffee. She offered one to Grace. Thanks. Grace took it suspicious. Don't thank me yet. It's terrible coffee, but it's caffeinated. Victoria's expression was unreadable. I'm not rooting for you, Grace, but I'm not rooting against you either. Mr. Hayes believes in you. That means something. Does it? It means don't embarrass him. Or yourself. Victoria checked her watch. 2 minutes. Good luck. Grace entered the conference room. It was packed. Not just the senior leadership from Monday, but at least a dozen other people. All of them looked at her with varying degrees of hostility or curiosity. Langford sat at the far end of the table, flanked by 2 men in identical gray suits. His expression was smug. He'd brought reinforcements. William entered precisely at 2:00 p.m. Let's begin. Langford, you have the floor first. Langford stood and launched into his presentation. It was slicker than Monday's. More data, more projections. He'd brought in testimonials from other companies that had done similar workforce reductions, had charts showing increased stock prices after cuts. It was impressive. Grace had to admit it. When he finished, several people around the table nodded approvingly. Questions? William asked. One of Langford's allies spoke up. This seems like a sound strategy. The numbers are clear. We'd see immediate returns. Another chimed in. The Orion leadership team supports this plan. They understand the necessity. Grace listened, waited. William's eyes found hers. Miss Thompson, your analysis. Grace stood. Her legs felt steady now. Something had shifted in her during Langford's presentation. She'd stopped being nervous and started being angry. Angry that these men in their expensive suits were talking about destroying lives like it was a chess game. Mr. Langford's presentation is very polished, Grace began. Lot of impressive charts, good data visualization, but there's something missing from every single slide. And what's that? Langford's tone was patronizing. Reality. Grace pulled up her own presentation. No fancy graphics, just numbers and facts. Orion Group manufactures precision parts for medical equipment. Their workforce isn't interchangeable. These aren't people flipping burgers. They're trained technicians with an average tenure of 8 years. You cut 800 of them. You lose institutional knowledge that took nearly a decade to build. She clicked to the next slide. Mr. Langford showed you examples of successful workforce reductions. Let me show you the failures. She pulled up 3 case studies. Bennett Manufacturing cut 60% of their workforce in 2019. Within 18 months, they couldn't meet production quotas, lost their biggest contracts, filed for bankruptcy in 2021. Cascade Industries, similar story. And Western Fabrication, they're currently being sued for $200 million because their reduced workforce couldn't maintain quality standards. The room was silent now. People were leaning forward. Grace continued. Mr. Langford's plan saves $50 million annually, but here's what it costs. She clicked through detailed projections. Recruiting and training new workers when you inevitably realize you cut too deep, $35 million over 3 years. Lost productivity during transition, conservatively, $15 million. PR crisis management when this hits the news, $5 million minimum. Potential lawsuits for age discrimination because, let's be honest, most of the cuts target workers over 50, unlimited liability. Langford stood up. This is speculation. No, Mr. Langford, this is pattern recognition based on actual data. Grace didn't back down. You're looking at spreadsheets. I'm looking at reality. Reality. Langford's face was red now. You've worked here for 4 days. 4 days. And you think you understand this business better than people who've been doing it for decades? I understand people. And I understand that when you treat human beings like line items on a budget, you destroy more than jobs. You destroy productivity, loyalty, the very foundation that makes a company work. One of the men next to Langford spoke up. Even if your projections are correct, your alternative still saves less money. In the short term, yes. But companies aren't built on quarters. They're built on years. My plan is sustainable. His is a Band-Aid that'll bleed out in 18 months. William spoke for the first time. Walk us through your alternative again, in detail. Grace took a breath. This was it. Phase 1 voluntary early retirement packages for 300 workers aged 60 and above. Generous packages, not insults. That saves approximately $20 million annually and allows us to retain critical knowledge through a 3-month transition period where retirees train their replacements. She clicked to the next slide. Phase 2 management restructuring. Currently, Orion has 6 executives making a combined $12 million annually. We reduced to 4 executives implement a performance-based compensation structure. Savings $8 million annually. Phase 3 technology investment, $10 million over 2 years to modernize equipment and training. This increases productivity by an estimated 15%, which offsets the smaller workforce reduction. Net result, $18 million in sustainable annual savings. Retention of 75% of workforce, maintained production capacity, and zero PR nightmare. Grace looked around the table. It's not as immediately profitable as Mr. Langford's plan, but it won't destroy the company either. Langford slammed his hand on the table. This is absurd. We're here to maximize value, not run a charity. And I'm here to make sure we still have a company to maximize. Grace turned to face him directly. You want to talk about value? Fine. Let's talk about what happens to Hayes Corporation's reputation when the headline reads, "Predatory firm destroys Midwest manufacturing town." Let's talk about the protests, the boycotts, the politicians who'll suddenly take interest in our other acquisitions. You're being dramatic. I'm being realistic. Orion Group is the largest employer in Millbrook, Indiana. Population 15,000. You cut 800 jobs there. You don't just hurt those workers. You kill that entire town. Every business that depends on those workers' paychecks. Every family. Every kid who won't be able to afford college. Grace's voice was steady. And when that town dies, it'll have Hayes Corporation's fingerprints all over it. Is that the legacy you want? The room was silent. One of the board members Grace didn't recognize spoke up. She has a point about the optics. Another nodded. The PR costs could be significant. Langford looked around, his expression darkening as he realized he was losing support. This is exactly why we shouldn't hire people based on sentiment. This woman has no business experience, no credentials, and she's turning a simple restructuring into an emotional argument. Grace felt the anger flash hot in her chest. She kept her voice level. You're right, Mr. Langford. I don't have an MBA. I didn't go to Wharton. But I've been on the other side of decisions like yours. I've watched good people lose everything because someone in a boardroom decided their lives were worth less than a percentage point on a profit margin. She stepped closer to the table. And you know what? That experience is more valuable than any degree, because I know what you can't see in your spreadsheets. I know that Maria Rodriguez in quality control has worked at Orion for 12 years, and she's the only person who can spot defects that would cost us millions in recalls. I know that James Patterson in assembly trained half the current workforce, and his knowledge is irreplaceable. I know these things because I read the employee files, all of them, because unlike you, I actually care about the people we're talking about destroying. Langford's face was purple. How dare you? How dare I what? Tell you the truth, do my job. Grace didn't break eye contact. It's always just business until someone makes you look at the human cost. Well, here it is. 800 people, 800 families. Thousands of lives affected, and the only question that matters is whether we're willing to destroy all of that to make your profit projection look better on paper. The silence that followed was absolute. William stood. I think we've heard enough. I'll need time to review both proposals with the board. We'll reconvene Monday morning with a decision. His eyes swept the room. Dismissed. People filed out slowly. Grace gathered her materials with shaking hands. She'd done it. She'd made her case. She'd also probably just ended her career. Langford walked past her without a word, but his look promised retribution. His allies followed, murmuring amongst themselves. Miss Thompson. Grace looked up. William was still there, along with 2 other people. an older woman with kind eyes and a younger man taking notes. "This is Barbara Chen, head of our board of directors, and Thomas Wright, general counsel." Grace's stomach dropped. "Miss Chen, Mr. Wright." Barbara smiled. "That was quite a presentation, young lady." "Thank you, I think." "Harrison Langford has been pushing aggressive cost-cutting measures for years," Barbara continued. "William brought you in specifically to challenge that approach, but I don't think any of us expected you to challenge it quite so forcefully. I apologize if I overstepped." "Don't." Barbara's voice was firm. "Don't apologize for being right. Or for having courage." She glanced at William. "Your instinct was correct. She sees what others miss." Thomas spoke up. "For the record, your legal analysis was sound. The age discrimination exposure alone could cost us far more than Langford's plan saves." After they left, only William remained. "Well," Grace asked, "am I fired?" "No, but Langford is going to make your life hell now. You embarrassed him twice. He won't forget that." "I didn't mean to embarrass him. I just told the truth." "I know." William walked to the window, looked out at the city. "The board meets tomorrow. They'll make the final decision. But between us, you won the room today." "I did." Barbara doesn't give praise lightly, and Thomas never speaks up unless something has significant merit. William turned back to her. "You did good work, Grace. Really good work." Grace felt something tight in her chest loosen. "Thank you." "Don't thank me yet. This was the easy part." "That was easy." William's smile was slight. "Convincing people with logic and data, that's easy. The hard part comes when someone tries to destroy you for being right. And trust me, that's coming." After he left, Grace sat alone in the empty conference room. She pulled out her phone and saw a text from Mrs. Chen. "Emma's asking when you're coming home. She misses you." Grace typed back, "Tell her mama's coming home soon, and that I love her." She gathered her things and headed out. As she waited for the elevator, Victoria approached. "You survived," Victoria said. "Barely." "Langford is furious. He's already making calls trying to undermine you." "Why are you telling me this?" Victoria pressed the elevator button. "Because Mr. Hayes asked me to keep you informed. And because—" She paused. "Because maybe you're not what I thought you were." The elevator arrived. They stepped in together. "What did you think I was?" Grace asked. "A charity case. Someone William hired to make himself feel better about neglecting his mother." Victoria's eyes met Grace's. "I was wrong. You're not here because of Maggie. You're here because you're actually good at this." The elevator doors opened on the ground floor. "That almost sounded like a compliment," Grace said. "Don't let it go to your head." But Victoria's expression was almost friendly. "See you Monday, Grace. Try to enjoy your weekend before all hell breaks loose." Grace walked out of Hayes Corporation into the late afternoon sun. Her feet hurt, her head hurt, her whole body was exhausted. But she'd done it. She'd faced down the boardroom and won. Now she just had to survive whatever came next. 4 months later, Grace barely recognized her own life. She lived in a better apartment now. 2 bedrooms, so Emma had her own room. New furniture. A refrigerator that didn't sound like it was dying. Emma went to a good preschool where they taught her actual things instead of just parking her in front of cartoons. Grace wore real professional clothes, got her hair done at an actual salon, had business cards with her name and title, Senior Consultant, Human Capital Strategy. She still couldn't believe it was real sometimes. The Orion deal had gone through with her restructuring plan. 0 layoffs beyond the voluntary retirements. The local news in Millbrook had run a story calling Hayes Corporation a rare example of ethical business practices. Barbara Chen had sent Grace a personal note. "You saved those jobs and our reputation. Well done." Grace had framed it. Put it on her desk next to the photo of Emma. She'd also gotten close to Maggie. Took her to doctor's appointments every Tuesday and Thursday. They'd have lunch after just the 2 of them talking about everything and nothing. Maggie told stories about William as a boy, about her late husband, about the life she'd lived before MS stole her mobility. Grace told Maggie about Emma, about her own mother who died when Grace was 19, about the dreams she'd had to put on hold when she got pregnant. They'd become friends, real friends. Life was good. That should have been Grace's first warning. It was a Tuesday morning, 7:45 a.m., when Victoria appeared in Grace's office doorway. Her face was grim. "We have a problem." Grace looked up from her coffee. "What kind of problem?" "The kind that could end your career. Come with me." They went to William's office. He was already there along with Thomas Wright and 2 people Grace didn't recognize. Both wore suits that screamed law enforcement. Grace's stomach dropped. "What's going on?" William's face was stone. There's been a security breach. Classified information from our bid on the Meridian government contract was leaked to our competitor. The leak came from your email account. The room tilted. What? No, that's impossible. Thomas pulled out a tablet, showed her a screen. There it was, an email from her account sent 3 days ago at 11:47 p.m. with attachments labeled Confidential Meridian Bid Strategy. I didn't send that. I wasn't even in the office at 11:47 on Friday. I was home with Emma. Can anyone verify that? One of the unknown men asked. My daughter, she's 3. Anyone else? Grace's mind raced. No, she was asleep. I was working on my laptop in the living room, but I was working on the Henderson merger, not the Meridian contract. Check my home system logs. We did, Thomas said quietly. Your laptop shows you accessed the Meridian files at 11:43 p.m. That's impossible. I never… Grace stopped, felt the ground disappearing beneath her. Someone used my credentials. Someone hacked my account. Or, Victoria said, her voice careful, you sent the files and are now claiming you were hacked. Why would I do that? What would I possibly gain? The other unknown man spoke. The competing firm Blackstone Partners has connections to several board members who opposed your hiring. It's possible they approached you with an offer. This is insane. I didn't do this. Grace looked at William. His face was unreadable. You can't actually think I'd sabotage the company. It doesn't matter what I think. The board is convening an emergency meeting in an hour. They're calling for your immediate termination. Based on what circumstantial evidence? Based on the fact that you're the easy target, Victoria said. You've been here 4 months. You don't have a decade of loyalty to fall back on. You're an outsider, and Marcus Webb has been pushing this narrative hard since the leak was discovered. Marcus. Grace remembered him from her first day. Senior VP of Strategy, the one Jake had warned her about. Why would Marcus want me gone? Because you're in his way, Thomas said. He was in line for your position before William created it for you. He's been undermining you since day one. Grace's mind was spinning. So someone, probably Marcus, hacked my account, sent classified files to our competitor, and now I'm taking the fall. That's the theory, William said. But we need proof. Then get it. Pull the IP addresses, check the metadata, trace the actual source of the email. We have. The IP address matches your home network. Grace felt like she'd been punched. Then someone accessed my home network. That's possible, right? Thomas nodded. Possible, but difficult to prove in the next 50 minutes before the board meeting. So what do I do? William finally moved. He came around his desk, faced Grace directly. I need you to tell me the truth. Right now. Did you send those files? Grace met his eyes. No, I swear to you, I didn't do this. After everything, after I gave you this chance, after my mother. His voice was tight. I need to know if I made a mistake trusting you. The words hurt more than Grace expected. You didn't make a mistake. Someone set me up, and I'm going to prove it. How? I don't know yet, but I will. Victoria's phone buzzed. She checked it. The board is ready. They want Grace there. Now. The walk to the boardroom felt like a death march. People stared as Grace passed. Word had already spread. The whispers followed her like ghosts. The boardroom was packed. Every board member present. Marcus Webb sat near the head of the table, his expression carefully neutral. Langford was there too, barely hiding his satisfaction. Barbara Chen called the meeting to order. Ms. Thompson, you stand accused of corporate espionage, specifically leaking proprietary information to Blackstone Partners, resulting in their underbid on the Meridian contract. We lost a $1 billion deal because of this breach. What do you have to say? Grace stood. Her legs were shaking, but her voice was steady. I didn't do it. I was set up. By whom? Marcus asked. His tone was sympathetic, concerned, completely fake. I don't know yet, but I will find out. Langford leaned forward. Miss Thompson, the evidence is clear. The email came from your account, from your home IP address, at a time when you were logged into our systems. What other explanation could there be? That someone hacked my credentials and spoofed my location. It's not exactly complicated for someone with the right access. And who would have that access? Barbara asked. Anyone in IT. Anyone with administrative privileges. Anyone Marcus Webb gave access to. Grace looked directly at Marcus. Because this has his fingerprints all over it. Marcus's expression didn't change. That's a serious accusation, Miss Thompson. Do you have any proof? Not yet, but give me 72 hours and I will. 72 hours, Langford laughed. You expect us to just wait while you fabricate evidence? I expect you to follow due process, which means not firing someone without a proper investigation. Barbara looked at William. What do you recommend? William was quiet for a long moment. Everyone waited. Grace is right. We should investigate properly. Give her 3 days to gather evidence. If she can prove she was framed, we proceed accordingly. If she can't, he didn't finish the sentence. And in the meantime, Langford demanded, she has access to all our systems. What's to stop her from causing more damage? Suspend her access, Thomas suggested. Suspend her credentials, but don't terminate. Not yet. Barbara nodded slowly. 72 hours, Miss Thompson. Prove your innocence or you're done. Understood. Understood. After the meeting, Grace went straight to her office. She had 3 days to save her career. She pulled out her phone and called Jake Miller. Jake, I need your help. Now. I heard what happened. Grace, I'm sorry. Don't be sorry. Help me prove I didn't do this. Silence. Then, they'll fire me too if they catch us. I know. And I can't ask you to. I'm in. Where do you want to meet? Not here. They're watching me. Somewhere outside the building. Coffee shop on 53rd. 1 hour. Grace grabbed her bag and left. Didn't say goodbye to anyone. Just walked out. She stopped by Maggie's care facility on the way. Found the old woman in the common room reading. Grace. Maggie's face lit up, then darkened. I heard. William called me. He's devastated. He thinks I did it. No. He thinks he has to consider that you did it. There's a difference. Maggie reached for Grace's hand. What do you need? I need someone who's good with financial analysis. Someone who can trace money transfers that someone tried to hide. Maggie smiled. You need a forensic accountant who worked in corporate fraud investigation for 15 years before MS made her retire. You did. My dear, I didn't spend 30 years as CFO just moving numbers around. I caught embezzlers, lots of them. Maggie's eyes sharpened. Tell me everything. The coffee shop on 53rd was deliberately anonymous. No corporate crowd, just students, freelancers, and people who had nowhere else to be on a Tuesday afternoon. Grace sat in the back corner watching the door. Her phone buzzed. A text from Mrs. Chen. Emma keeps asking where you are. I told her work, but she's worried. Grace typed back. Tell her mama loves her and we'll be home for dinner. Promise. Jake arrived 15 minutes late carrying a laptop bag and looking nervous. You're sure about this? He asked. Because if we get caught, I need someone who understands the systems. Someone who can help me trace that email. Jake pulled out his laptop. I already started. The email from your account was sent at 11:47 p.m. on Friday. But at 11:43 p.m., there was a VPN connection from your home IP. That VPN routed through 3 different servers before accessing the Hayes network. Can you trace where it originated? Whoever did this had your exact login information, your password, your security token. Jake looked up. If someone got physical access to your laptop, they could install a keylogger. Grace thought back. My laptop. I left it in the office Friday afternoon. I had to run to pick up Emma early from school. Emergency call. She'd fallen and hit her head. So your laptop was unattended for how long? Maybe 2 hours. I didn't get back to the office. Just went straight home with Emma, Jake typed rapidly. Building security logs show 14 people scanned into the 38th floor during that time. 4 were IT maintenance, routine system updates. Who authorized IT maintenance on a Friday evening? Marcus Webb's office? Grace leaned back. So Marcus schedules maintenance, I leave my laptop unattended, and suddenly someone has my credentials. Jake pulled up another screen. Maintenance logs show your system had an additional access at 6:23 p.m. Installation of a remote monitoring tool, disguised as a security update. Who installed it? IT admin account, Jeffrey Brooks, Senior Network Administrator. Grace's phone rang. Maggie. I'm at my old office, Maggie said. I've been going through financial records. Marcus Webb has a history. Back in 2019, there was an internal investigation into potential kickbacks. Never went anywhere because the evidence disappeared. But the investigators' notes mentioned a shell company called Meridian Solutions LLC. Grace's blood ran cold. Meridian, like the government contract. I don't believe in coincidences. I need access to Marcus's recent financial records, specifically any unusual transactions in the past 6 months. Jake can pull expense reports, Grace said, putting Maggie on speaker. Jake was already typing. I've got expense reports for Marcus's department for the past year. He scrolled through data. Wait, 3 months ago, Marcus submitted a reimbursement for a trip to the Cayman Islands. Client meeting, but the expenses are weird. High-end hotel for 4 days. Cash advance of $10,000 that was never properly documented. Maggie made a sound like a hunter spotting prey. Cayman Islands, where banking secrecy laws make it easy to hide money. Jake cross-referenced that trip with any communications between Marcus and Blackstone Partners. "If I'm caught accessing executive emails, do it," Grace said. "Please. This is going to take hours. We have until Thursday morning, 48 hours. They split up. Jake went to his apartment to work. Grace went home to Emma. Maggie continued digging through financial records. Around 2 a.m., Grace's phone buzzed. A text from Jake. "Got something. You need to see this." Grace met Jake at an all-night diner. He looked exhausted. "I found the emails," he said. "Marcus has been in contact with Blackstone's VP of Strategy for 6 months. Encrypted emails." "What do they say?" Jake pulled up the files. 2 days before our Meridian bid was finalized, Marcus sent an email with an attachment labeled Preliminary Thoughts. 3 hours later, Blackstone submitted their bid at exactly $2 million less than ours. They knew our exact bid amount. And look at this email from 2 weeks ago. Marcus to Blackstone package will be delivered as discussed. Ensure payment is processed through the agreed channels. Grace called Maggie. It was 2:30 a.m., but Maggie answered immediately. "Tell me you found the money trail." "I found it. Meridian Solutions LLC received $2 million from a Cayman Islands account 2 weeks ago. That account received $3 million from a holding company owned by Blackstone Partners the day after they won the Meridian contract. So Blackstone paid Marcus $2 million for the information. The money went through 3 shell companies to obscure the trail, but I tracked it. Bank statements, transfer records, everything." Grace felt something loosen in her chest. "We have him." They spent the next day assembling their case. Jake created a timeline. Maggie organized financial documents. Grace wrote a summary connecting all the pieces. By Wednesday evening, they had everything. Marcus Webb had sold confidential information for $2 million. He'd used Grace's credentials to frame her, and they could prove it. "What now?" Jake asked. They were gathered in Grace's apartment. Emma was asleep. "Now we go to war," Grace said. "The board meets tomorrow at 9 a.m. Maggie squeezed Grace's hand. "You did good, dear." "We did good. I couldn't have done this without you both." "That's what family does," Maggie said softly. "We protect each other." Thursday morning, Grace dressed carefully, her best suit. She needed to look calm, even though inside she was terrified. Victoria met her outside the boardroom. "Marcus is already inside. He's confident." The boardroom filled quickly. William arrived at 8:58. Barbara Chen took her seat. Marcus sat 3 seats down, looking relaxed. At exactly 9:00 a.m., Barbara called the meeting to order. "Miss Thompson, you had 72 hours to prove your innocence. What have you found?" Grace stood. Maggie wheeled herself in behind her, followed by Jake carrying a laptop and documents. Marcus's expression flickered. Surprise, then concern. "Members of the board," Grace began, "I didn't leak the Meridian bid, but I know who did. And I can prove it." Jake connected his laptop to the boardroom screen. "On Friday, October 13th at 6:23 p.m., someone installed remote monitoring software on my laptop. That software captured my login credentials." The screen showed the installation logs. The software was installed using Jeffrey Brooks's IT admin account, but Mr. Brooks was off-site that evening. "This proves nothing," Marcus said. "Brooks could have installed it remotely, except the installation required physical access, and building security shows that during the installation window, only 4 people were on the 38th floor. 2 were cleaning staff. 1 was Grace, who'd already left, and 1 was you, Mr. Webb." The room went silent. Grace continued. "The monitoring software allowed someone to see everything I did. On November 3rd, someone used my credentials to send the Meridian bid to Blackstone Partners. That someone was you, Marcus. I was home that evening. My wife can confirm. You were home, but you accessed the system remotely using my credentials." Jake brought up the VPN logs. "The connection originated from your home IP address in Connecticut." Marcus's face was pale. "I occasionally work from home. That doesn't mean—" "It means everything when we add the financial component," Maggie said. She placed a folder on the table in front of Barbara. "This folder contains bank records for Meridian Solutions, LLC. That company received $2 million from a Cayman Islands account on November 5th, 2 days after the bid was leaked." I've never heard of that company. Then why is your signature on the incorporation documents? Maggie pulled out a document. And why did you personally visit the Cayman Islands in September to set up the account? Barbara opened the folder, her expression darkening. Maggie continued, the $2 million came from an account funded by Blackstone Partners. They paid you to steal our bid, and you used Grace as your scapegoat. Grace placed a final document on the table. These are encrypted emails between Marcus and Blackstone's VP. Jake decrypted them. They explicitly discuss the exchange of confidential information for payment. Barbara read the emails. Her face was stone. Marcus stood up. This is fabricated. Sit down, Mr. Webb. Barbara's voice could have cut glass. Marcus sat. Barbara looked around the table. Does anyone else need to review this evidence? The board members passed the documents around in silence. Finally, Thomas Wright spoke. This is enough for criminal prosecution, corporate espionage, fraud. I recommend immediate termination and referral to federal authorities. Seconded, another board member said. Barbara looked at Marcus. Do you have anything to say? Marcus's hands shook. There must be some mistake. The only mistake was thinking you were clever enough to get away with this. You're terminated effective immediately. Security will escort you from the building, and Mr. Wright will be contacting the FBI within the hour. 2 security guards entered. Marcus stood, mechanically allowed himself to be led out. He didn't look at Grace as he passed. After he was gone, Barbara turned to Grace. Miss Thompson, on behalf of Hayes Corporation, I apologize. What happened to you was unconscionable. She stood. I'm recommending to the full board that you be promoted to Vice President of Human Capital Strategy, effective immediately. Grace felt her knees go weak. Thank you. Thank your friends. Without them, Marcus might have succeeded. Barbara looked at Maggie and Jake. You both have my gratitude. After the meeting, William approached Grace. I doubted you, he said quietly. When I saw that evidence, I wondered if I'd been wrong about you. I'm sorry. You gave me a chance to prove myself. That's more than most people would have done. William glanced at his mother. She never doubted you. Not for a second. She said you had more integrity than Marcus had in his entire body. She was right. Maggie wheeled over. Of course I was right. I'm old. We're always right. Grace knelt down and hugged her. Thank you for everything. You saved my son's company, dear. You did it with the same kindness you showed me that rainy night. Maggie smiled. That's who you are. Don't let anyone make you forget it. That evening, Grace picked up Emma early, took her to the park, pushed her on the swings until Emma's laughter filled the air. Mama, you're happy today, Emma observed. I am, baby. Very happy. Because of work. Because of friends. Because of good people who helped me when I needed it. Grace crouched to Emma's level. Remember this. The people who matter aren't the ones with money or fancy titles. They're the ones who show up when things are hard. Emma nodded solemnly. Like Mrs. Maggie. Exactly like Mrs. Maggie. That night after Emma was asleep, Grace stood at her window looking out at the city. Tomorrow, she'd start her new role as vice president. But tonight, she just felt grateful. For Maggie. For Jake. For the chance William had given her. And for the reminder that kindness, the simple act of seeing someone as human, could change everything. 5 years later, Grace sat in her corner office on the 40th floor, looking out at Manhattan stretched beneath her like a promise kept. The view never got old. Her desk held the usual clutter of executive life, reports awaiting signature, strategic plans, meeting agendas, but also a photo of Emma, now 8 years old, and grinning with a missing front tooth, a framed note from Barbara Chen, and a small glass paperweight that Maggie had given her last Christmas, engraved with the words, "Kindness is strength." Grace's phone buzzed. A text from Emma. Mom, I got an A on my book report. Miss Henderson says I'm a really good writer. Grace smiled and typed back, That's my girl, so proud of you. Pizza for dinner to celebrate. The response was immediate. Yes, extra cheese. Grace set her phone down and pulled up her calendar. 2 p.m. meeting with the board to discuss the Thompson-Sullivan Community Initiative. 3:30 p.m. conference call with the Orion Group management team. They'd just posted their most profitable quarter in company history. 5 p.m. pick up Emma from school. Her life was busy, sometimes overwhelming, but it was hers and she'd built it through hard work and the help of people who'd believed in her. A knock on the door. Victoria entered holding a folder. The Forbes reporter is here for your interview, Victoria said. Should I show her in? Actually, I'm going to cancel that. Victoria raised an eyebrow. You're canceling Forbes. They're calling you the waitress who became a corporate hero. I know, and I hate that headline. I'm not a hero. I'm just someone who did her job. You revolutionized how Hayes Corporation approaches acquisitions. You saved thousands of jobs. You created a community investment program that's been adopted by 12 other companies. Victoria sat down. That sounds like hero material to me. It sounds like what anyone with a conscience would do. Grace closed her laptop. Tell the reporter I appreciate the interest, but I'm not the story. The real story is about people like Maggie. People who've been underestimated their entire lives and still find ways to fight back. Victoria was quiet for a moment. You know, when William first hired you, I thought it was the worst decision he'd ever made. I know. You weren't exactly subtle about it. I was wrong. About everything. You're one of the best executives I've ever worked with. Victoria stood. And for what it's worth, I'm glad you're here. After Victoria left, Grace checked her email. One message caught her attention. Subject line, "Thank you." She opened it. Miss Thompson. You don't know me, but you saved my job 5 years ago. I was one of the 800 workers at Orion Group who were supposed to be laid off. I was 58 years old. I'd worked there for 23 years. I thought my life was over. Then Hayes Corporation announced they were restructuring instead of cutting. They offered training programs, early retirement options for people who wanted them. They actually cared about us. I'm 63 now. I took the early retirement package last year. I have enough money to live comfortably. My grandchildren have a college fund, and I get to spend my days doing things I love instead of worrying about making ends meet. I heard you were the one who fought for us, who convinced the board that we were worth saving. I just wanted to say thank you. You changed my life. Sincerely, James Patterson, former Assembly Line Supervisor, Orion Group. Grace read the email 3 times. Then she forwarded it to William with a note. This is why we do what we do. His response came 2 minutes later. Come to my office. There's someone I want you to meet. Grace walked down the hall to William's corner office. The door was open. William stood by the window with a young woman in her early 20s. She had Maggie's eyes. Grace, this is my niece Sarah. She's starting at Hayes next week. Business school graduate, top of her class, all the credentials. William smiled. But I told her the most important thing she needs to learn, she'll learn from you. Sarah extended her hand. It's an honor to meet you, Miss Thompson. My grandmother talks about you constantly. Your grandmother exaggerates. No, she doesn't. Sarah's grip was firm. She says you taught her that getting old doesn't mean getting invisible, that everyone has value regardless of age or circumstance. She says working with you reminded her who she used to be. Grace felt her throat tighten. Your grandmother reminded me who I wanted to be. After Sarah left, William gestured for Grace to sit. I wanted to talk to you about something, he said. The board has approved a significant expansion of the community investment program. 5 cities initially with potential for nationwide rollout. That's incredible. It's also a lot of work. Too much for one person to manage alongside your current responsibilities. William leaned back in his chair. So I'm creating a new position, Chief Social Impact Officer, someone who can focus exclusively on making sure Hayes Corporation doesn't just make money, but does right by the communities we operate in. Grace already knew where this was going. You want me to take it? I want you to consider it. It would mean stepping away from some of your operational duties, but it would also mean building something that could outlast all of us. A legacy of actually giving a damn about people. Can I think about it? Take your time. But Grace. William's expression was serious. You've changed this company. You've changed me. I used to think business was just numbers and strategy. You taught me it's about people. I want to make sure that philosophy survives long after we're both gone. Grace left his office and went to visit Maggie. She did this twice a week now, sometimes more. She found Maggie in the facility's garden, sitting in her wheelchair with a book in her lap. The old woman looked frailer now. The MS was progressing, but her eyes were still sharp, still kind. There's my girl, Maggie said, smiling. You look troubled. Grace sat on the bench next to her. William offered me a new position, the Chief Social Impact Officer role. Yes, he told me he was going to ask you. Of course he did. You two talk about everything. We're mother and son. That's what we do. Maggie closed her book. Are you going to take it? I don't know. It's a big change. And I've finally gotten good at what I'm doing now. That's exactly why you should take it. You're not someone who plays it safe, Grace. You're someone who sees what needs to be done and does it regardless of the cost." Grace was quiet for a long moment. "That rainy night when you were sitting outside the diner, did you know it would lead to all of this?" "Of course not. I was just a scared old woman who thought her son had forgotten her." Maggie reached over and took Grace's hand. "But you saw me. Not the wheelchair, not the disease, not the rich woman slumming in a poor neighborhood. You just saw someone who needed help, and you helped. That's who you are." "I was just doing what anyone would do." "No, dear. That's what you think anyone would do. But most people walked past me that night." "You didn't." Maggie squeezed her hand. "Take the job. Build something beautiful. Show the world that business doesn't have to be brutal to be successful." That evening, Grace picked up Emma from school. They went to their favorite pizza place, the one that knew their order by heart. "Mom," Emma said through a mouthful of extra cheese, "what does your company do?" "We buy other companies and help make them better." "Like fixing broken things?" "Sort of. More like helping them work better." "That's cool." Emma took another bite. "When I grow up, I want to help people too. Like you do." Grace felt her eyes sting. "You already help people, baby. You're kind. You care about others. That's the most important thing." "Mrs. Chen says you're the smartest person she knows." "Mrs. Chen is very kind. She says you started out as a waitress and now you're a vice president. That's like going from a caterpillar to a butterfly." Grace laughed. "That's actually a perfect way to put it." That night, after Emma was asleep, Grace stood at her window again. Same city, same view, but everything was different. She pulled out her phone and texted William, "I'll take the position. Let's build something that matters." His response, "I never doubted you would." Grace walked to Emma's room and stood in the doorway watching her daughter sleep, the same way she'd done 5 years ago in a different apartment, in a different life. "I did it, baby," Grace whispered. "I made things better. For you, for us, for people we'll never even meet." She thought about that rainy night, about Maggie sitting outside in the cold, about the choice she'd made to help a stranger instead of staying warm and dry inside. One choice, one act of kindness, and it had changed everything. Grace walked back to her bedroom and lay down. Tomorrow she'd start planning the expansion of the community initiative. She'd hire a team. She'd travel to cities that needed help. She'd work harder than she ever had before. But tonight, she'd rest and be grateful for Maggie, for William, for Jake, for every person who'd helped her along the way, and for the reminder that sometimes the smallest acts of kindness create the biggest changes. The rain that had brought Maggie to her door that night had been cold and harsh, but it had also washed away the old world and made room for something new, something better, something built on the radical idea that people mattered more than profit. That dignity was more valuable than efficiency. That kindness wasn't weakness, it was the foundation of everything worth building. Grace closed her eyes and smiled. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but she was ready. She'd always been ready. She just hadn't known it yet.
Join us to share meaningful stories by hitting the like and subscribe buttons. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell to start your day with profound lessons and heartfelt empathy.